or the Sun Peaks Mountain Resort Municipality, 3 p.m. on December the 16th. Today's public hearing is convened under the provisions of the Local Government Act of British Columbia to hear submissions relative to the temporary use permit 2025004. This is the public's opportunity to make representations to council. All persons who believe their interest in property is affected by the proposed TUP or temporary use permit shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard respecting matters in the proposed TUP. I would ask that those members of the public who wish to speak to commence your address to this council, clearly stating your name. Council will not debate the matters of the proposed bylaw or the temporary use permit with individual citizens, but council members may ask questions of you following your presentation. The main function of this public hearing is to listen to your views. No one will be or should be discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. Temporary use permit number 2025004, if approved, will permit commercial parking on the green space located at 3335 Valley Drive, otherwise known as Parcel S. Do we have any written submissions?
We do, Mr. Mayor. There are 3 written submissions received expressing concerns, and those were shared on the public hearing and regular agenda as well.
Okay, thank you. And do we have anybody wishing to speak on this matter? Call anybody online at all? No?
Let me just bring it up real quick.
So the applicant online?
No. I call for a second time. Anybody wishing to speak on this matter? And for a third and final time. There being no further speakers, I declare this public hearing closed. Okay. Moving on. Call this regular council meeting for Sun Peaks Mountain Resort Municipality to order. The time is 3:02 on Tuesday, December the 16th. I'd like to acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Secwepemc people. Do we have any introduction of late items?
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as circulated? Councillor Kimball, seconded by Councillor Ryken. All in favor? Excellent. Under 4, adoption of minutes 4:1. We have the regular council meeting minutes of December the 2nd. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Ryken, seconded by Councillor Kimball. Any errors or omissions? Anyone? No? All in favor? Thank you. And under 4:2, the minutes of the public hearing dated December the 2nd. Can I get a mover to accept? Councillor Ryken, seconded by Councillor Kimball. And all in favor? Or sorry, any errors or omissions? All in favor? You two are gonna have tired arms by the end. So, okay. So moving on to 5. 5.1. We have the temporary use permit application. We have a recommendation here around a permit application for temporary use permit on 3335 Village Place for a parking area. Director Hoffer, do you care to speak to this?
We talked about before, answer any other questions council might have. I just want to make a note that the attached permit did say December 2029. That should be December 2028. So we will make that change.
Yeah, so 25 to 28, that's the year term.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, perfect, thank you. 2025. Okay, can I get a motion? Councillor Kimball, second by Councillor Ryken, and then we had some discussion or questions. Anyone? Councillor Ryken?
Just through the staff, so, the way the permit is worded, there doesn't really appear to be any mechanism other than. I guess performance mechanism, so in the event that they don't honor the conditions of the permit. Really, it's up to the council to then, rescind the permit.
Yeah, the difficult thing is that it's not really necessarily the use of the park, the making it a park is the Sun Peaks Resort doing that on their own behalf. We don't really have any written agreements or anything to keep that space as a park. They've been doing that. It's going good for a lot of people. They want to continue that use. They didn't say anything about discontinuing that. This is just kind of
So, Director Hopper said a couple of things, so obviously reading through, the temporary use permit agreement, as to your point earlier. It does essentially describe that when not in use as a parking, that they will continue to maintain that space as a green space. Councilor Wright is pointing, I know there's language in there regarding during high fire season. I would assume we'd anticipate then if we run into a situation where there might be a desire to use it when we might have a higher than average fire hazard. They would discuss with them an opportunity to maybe wet down the field, those kinds of things, making sure the grass is cut short. Et cetera. And understanding the fact that it was being maintained, so to speak. Prior to being used for this, when it was just being left as a field, which was theirs, but was on, I guess. On a handshake loan to us to be used as a park for the last 15 years, because it was never designated for that. It's always been a planned hotel construction site.
Yes, the OCP and the master development plan have it more of a hotel future use.
With commercial, if I remember correctly, as well, at the ground floor, okay. Councilor Campbell?
I mean. I only have one sort of question, I don't know, under temporary use. Must not be noxious or undesirable because of smoke, noise, vibration, dirt, glare, odor, radiation, electrical interference. Obviously, there's going to be some noise, vibration, possibly odor or so on. Is there a way to, and again, I don't know if this is sort of not possible at all, but can you have a no idling, that sort of situation so that people don't have to deal with that sort of situation?
Yeah.
Yeah, if a little rusty on the procedure, but if council wants to amend the TUP as written, we can include that, or I can just include that right now.
You can include it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a valuable point, and much like you drive up to a school or any other kind of facility like that. You see these signs, no idling zones, and when you anticipate that the proximity to the arena. If it happens to be open on a weekend and somebody's coming to pick up kids, family members from a hockey game. You know, we'd rather than not be sitting there for 20 minutes while the kids are finishing on the ice with the car idling.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, noise, odor, et cetera. Anything else? Councilor Redmond?
Do we have parameters for time then? Like we should, if we're looking at instituting limited idling or some type of restriction, we should specify the kind of time period we're talking about.
You mean for how long?
Yeah. Like,
My understanding would be a no idling zone.
That's
Is
all I've
that
ever
what you're
seen.
insinuating? That's what you're encouraging? Yeah,
Because
no
I've
idling.
never seen it at the time, I've only seen signs
No idling.
posted, no idling,
Mhm.
so I'm not.
Unless we were
I'm
out
new
there.
to that, or, you know.
City of Kamloops, the bylaw prohibits all motor vehicles within city boundaries from idling for more than 3 consecutive minutes.
There you go.
I don't think you do have to have
A time
period
Okay.
if you want to enforce it.
Okay.
Makes sense.
I think
Yeah.
that's the
There needs to
challenge
be something
piece
specific.
is that.
So that, I mean, we wanna stick with, that they've got that policy and they probably been running that for some period of time.
Sure.
Staying consistent and following them as a nearby municipality.
Sure, so that goes into the
So that would be put on the signage.
posted.
Yeah, they're posted signage. Okay.
Okay, anything else? I would just like to say, I know we didn't get, there was no discussion during the public hearing portion, but keeping in mind that this is designated to be a hotel property, always has been. At some point, and I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I think it's somewhere in the 150 plus rooms designation, so it's in that similar size standpoint to the Keilty Creek. And you had commercial on the ground floor, there's gonna be underground parking, there's gonna be surface parking, there's gonna be guests attending. There would be people coming and going at all hours of the days and nights, so once it's a hotel, theoretically, the noise factor, et cetera. Light, those kinds of things will be far greater, I believe, than what it will be in a short-term temporary use of a parking lot at peak weekends and holidays, so. I anticipate that, long-term, when it goes back to being a hotel property, we'll see, once the construction's built, and that impact will be just as much, if not more, than what we'll see with this.
Mr. Mayor, Mr.
Yeah,
Burke,
CEO.
We'll just pointed out that we actually do have a no idling, in our parking and traffic regulations bylaw, and it reflects that 3 minute.
3 minute, same, perfect.
We'll just make sure.
Let's make sure we have
We're
signage.
forcing in the bylaw that we're.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
There, but there's a through question through the staff. Do we have anything in our temporary permit procedures or our zoning procedures for that matter to compel the applicant to show up when we're having a public hearing? I think it just behooves us as a collective group to ensure that applicants are in fact present so that they can answer questions of council. As part and parcel of that process.
I don't believe we have that requirement, but certainly staff can take that back when we're processing applications to encourage applicants.
I think it just makes for a respectful process and it gives us the opportunity, should we feel compelled to ask questions of the applicant, to do that, to satisfy ourselves that we've got sufficient level of information and understanding directly from the applicant.
That's where I can get.
Okay,
So
so that,
apologies to add, if it's the applicant or an agent, in case it's somebody
Yeah.
that maybe, you know.
Absolutely, as staff are processing this application, we should encourage applicants to be present at the council discussions.
okay, moving on. 6.2 on the staff report, 6.21, we have the council's meeting scheduled for 2026. CEO County, let's just speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor O'Toole. So this is an annual requirement that council approve their the year ahead. The council meeting schedule. So we have made some changes in terms of the days, or sort of the frequency really that we're proposing to have council meetings. So previously it was the first and third Tuesday of every month, unless otherwise posted. That often resulted in some scheduling conflicts and challenges with statutory holidays that would fall on a Monday. And so we took a look at other municipalities and sort of what the best practice was. Also taking into account our needs. And so what we're proposing now is that the meetings take place on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month, unless otherwise posted. There will be some conflicts where there's the UBCM convention or another statutory holiday, but for the most part, that would be the frequency of meetings.
Okay,
And I know that there's been some questions and concerns about the time that we have council meetings to ensure that members of the public are able to attend. Council wishes to have further discussion about that. I would just suggest that a separate report be brought forward in the future. Give staff the opportunity to do a little bit of research and present some options if council wishes. Otherwise, at this time, the meetings will work at 3 p.m. And we'll schedule committee of the whole meetings as needed, along with any council committees.
excellent. Can I get a motion to?
Just another quick question relative to October. So with the 20th meeting, appreciate that we've got the election leading into that, but there would be nothing stopping us in the event that we needed to have a meeting for the current council to meet on the 20th before the new council is inaugurated, right?
Good. Good, motion. By Councilor Kendall, second by Councilor Reagan. Any further questions or discussion? No, seeing none, all in favor? Okay. Good. 121. Okay, moving on to 622. The cast membership update. CEO Kendall.
Thank you, Mayor O'Toole. So council supported municipalities submitting an application to join as an associate member of the Colorado Association of Ski Towns. That was brought forward by their executive director to their board of directors at the beginning of December. And they have unanimously approved a membership as an associate member. Very exciting. So they hold 4 in-person meetings a year, with the expectation that we would try to at least attend 2 of those meetings. There's also an affordable housing task force that meets virtually. We have expressed some interest in participating on that task force. So between Mayor O'Toole and I will coordinate where possible to take turns attending 2 meetings per year. There is a annual general meeting coming up in Salida, Colorado, at the end of January, so we'll see if it's possible. We would like to try and attend, as it is an annual general meeting, we
Yeah,
would like to try.
That's one of the more important, obviously, to make it
Yes.
friendly too.
We'd like to try and attend that meeting. Since our associate membership has been announced, we've received very warm welcome from a number of other members of the association. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Excellent. Just a quick question on the affordable housing, the new program, is that, can any member of council be appointed for that? That need to be,
Good question. I can.
check.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. So that's great, and you attended the Worcester session, which
I did.
seems really valuable, okay? That's just for information, and moving on to 6.23. We're on a roll here. Our 2025-26 council strategic plan, CEO count.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is very exciting. This is the very first council strategic plan of Sun Peaks Mountain Resort Municipality. As noted in the report, typically a strategic plan would be approved at the start of the council term. But we still felt, and council felt, that it was important with a year remaining of the term to have a strategic plan in place. Priorities of the organization over the next year, hopefully beyond the 2026 election. So Randy Deal was hired to lead this work through a survey, as well as leading a strategic planning session with council and senior staff. And that's resulted in the attached strategic plan draft that we're looking for council's approval on.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the 25-26 strategic plan? Councilor Kim, second by Councilor Reagan. Any questions or discussion? No? All in favor? So moved. Okay. Okay. Moving on to 6.24. We have our capital asset program. The director of finance isn't here today, so. Okay, perfect.
Good morning, or good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Urban Systems has completed an asset management plan assessment to assist the municipality in improving long-term infrastructure planning. This work was supported through a 50% funding grant provided by UBCM. Before any recommendations are implemented, staff will conduct a more detailed review to assess operational, financial, and service level impacts. Please join me in welcoming Wade Turner from Urban Systems, who will highlight the key findings from the assessment.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Just want to ensure that you can hear me okay.
Very well, yeah.
Perfect. Just because the PowerPoint that we have that will be controlled by your office there, I'll just say next slide when we go to the next one, if you don't mind. But yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak with you briefly. I'll only take 15 minutes of your time, but be open to questions and as well as ongoing questions and work with your staff or any questions that come up through your team. But yeah, so as Cheryl said, the asset management program was 50% funded through UBCM's funding support. So half by yourselves, half by UBCM. And this has been an ongoing funding program that many municipalities have drawn upon to do up their asset management programs. Next slide, please. So with Sun Peaks Resort Municipality, you'll see that you have a bunch of services that are provided by yourselves to community members, businesses, and ultimately to the Sun Peaks community. That's a graphic provided by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, as well as a link after if you choose to view it. It's a nice video that speaks from the federal government with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, where they put together a video specifically from the perspective of mayor and councils on the different considerations that you might consider as you provide services to people. Obviously, the money needs to come from somewhere, but services are provided through having assets such as potable water through water treatment plants and your wells and distribution system that your staff currently manage. So the assets that we currently take into account in this program include your water system, wastewater system, storm drainage system, roads, buildings, as well as fleet. And there are additional assets that likely will be added over time as this plan is refined. but it gives you an idea that currently you're managing about $165 million asset portfolio, of which helps you provide services to the community. Next slide. So some of the key terms to be aware of as you're speaking with some of your staff. I see Clint in the room, and he's one of those people who will be looking at things like your estimated useful life. And those are estimates that we use to be able to determine how long we're anticipating assets that you put into service will last. I see your fire department's represented in the room as well, and that is an example of apparatuses for your fire trucks to the hall itself and other vehicles and distribution systems, your wells, treatment plants, and such. The expected remaining life is if something went in the 90s, which what a lot of your infrastructure did, it has a certain lifespan. Obviously, if things are going to be 100-year life, then you have lots of life left. But if you have something that's a shorter lifespan, then you'll have a lesser percentage of life based on age. And then your staff and other assessments that might be done by either our company, Urban Systems, or by others might recommend a shorter lifespan or a longer lifespan, depending on what you're experiencing in the field. And then your replacement value is also something to be aware of, and that is your current costs are all based off current construction costs in 2025. As the cost has been continuing to climb, especially in the last 5 years, then it's just to be alive. Even if you built nothing over the next couple of years, the value of your portfolio would continue to grow from the perspective of replacement value. And that often means financial preparedness, whether it be capital reserves and other mechanisms that you put into place to ensure the money is there. So when infrastructure needs to be worked on, or your contribution to a partially funded project, you have money in your reserves to help fund that. The infrastructure deficit or backlog can be a point where a lot of people end up focusing on, and that is just simply that you have some infrastructure currently that we might assign a 20-year lifespan to, and you might now be at 21 years. Doesn't mean that that is not working for you, but it does mean to be more mindful and maybe look at that in more detail, of which your staff have expressed an interest and ability to do that. So what you will notice through this, we have calculated with all your assets combined, we have calculated a general, what's called an average annual life cycle investment. It ends up being a rather hefty number, but to be alive to the fact that you're running a $165 million portfolio, that is going to require annual funding to be able to ensure you're ready when the time comes to deal with the assets that might need to be renewed or replaced. So you will see that number today, but I caution you to be too scared of that number. It is end up being a fairly big number, but it is just a calculated number based off what we know and the lifespan that we've given your assets to date. Next slide, please. So the full life cycle cost of your assets is your initial capital cost, which obviously the budget is approved to be able to purchase a new fire truck or whatever assets need to be renewed. But then you also need your annual operating and maintenance costs to ensure those assets are kept up to the service level that you need to be able to provide services through. Then you have your rehabilitation costs, that could be potholes in the roads, repaving efforts, relining of pipe systems, or renewing something in your treatment plants. And then there are also assets like a well that does require financial effort and cost to be able to actually seal the well so that it can be properly decommissioned, and that can come at a cost as well. So all that combined is your life cycle cost to be aware of. Next slide. So the information that's feeding into your plan is a cumulative effort of all the engineering work that's happened over time, capital purchases that you've put assets into service. We field visited almost all of your facilities and have full walkthroughs of each of those facilities, but we're also using a lot of engineering records, building plans, cost information from Cheryl and your finance team, as well as insurance records, useful life estimates, and all that combined is what you have currently that is feeding into your plan. The intent is that this plan is an ongoing plan that your staff would use to manage your assets as something is added or also taken out of service, if that's the case. And the bottom right table is a unit cost table, which is being generated through recent construction works, which is local to Sun Peaks on your projects within the last calendar year. Next slide. Part of what's feeding this is we've built a GIS-based asset inventory. Those for you familiar, GIS stands for Geographic Information System. All the information compiled to date is your information. You will see that there's the sort of red glowing area is the fire hall. So beside that, there is some infrastructure that likely you do not own, would be strata, flagged as strata infrastructure. But those are examples of ensuring that you know the ownership from one asset to another, depending on what it is, and if you're the actual owner or upkeeper of that asset. So what do you want to know? Who owns what? The location of it? What is the information we know about it, which we call attributes? And what is the cost to replace those assets? What condition is it in now? How long are we anticipating it'll last for? And then identifying the source of information. Because if something is based off an assumption, or if something is getting closer to needing to be replaced, we'll want to go look at it in ground truth and ensure, in fact, that it does need to be replaced. And that's where you strategically can manage your project and manage your assets. But we want to get to a more and more informed state as you get closer to actually wanting to spend the money to do something significant. Next slide. So as you build anything, it's going to trigger a process. If a fire truck is purchased or a well is put into service or the water line up to your raw water reservoir, it's going to trigger a process. So we want to capture all the information on that project. It's going to be added to your financial information. So this roadmap or process flow chart, if you will, each of the different parties on your team, such as the red is all the community's asset manager, the tan, the sort of brownie tan is the finance team, your finance team, the light blue is your operations and maintenance team, and then the green being making sure your digital systems are such that you can access that information. So just know that your staff and with support from us or others, if you would like, you are actively managing your information, keeping it current. And then part of keeping it current is there is a, I'll say a requirement by both the province and the federal government that if you're pursuing capital dollars for projects, they do want to know how your projects are being supported and also identified as a priority in your asset management program. So this isn't something we just do because we want to do it. It's partially because both the province and the federal government, to qualify for capital dollars, want to see that communities are actively managing their assets, prioritizing projects, and then looking after them as they're put into service. Next slide. So one of the things we did as part of our scope on this project is to set you up with an asset replacement forecast, which we call an ARF, and it looks at all the current replacement costs and useful life values for all the assets that you have currently in service and owned by yourselves. We look at long-term estimates on what it would cost each year to replace assets that are coming due, and then we're using 2025 current construction values or estimated values, as the case may be, to inform what these numbers are. We are taking a long-term view, so these costs are being projected out about 35 years currently. And we want to be able to see and give you transparency on, especially Mayor and Council, to be ability to be able to see when are the impending waves of capital dollars that may be required if we have to basically spend dollars and renew assets as they come due using this approach. The idea, of course, though, is as you're getting closer to needing to advance these projects, you and your team will look at things in greater detail and determine if things can be deferred or advanced depending on available funding. And as if they are in fact a priority, and if depending on what you can pull off as far as is it a part of an asset or the whole thing that'll be renewed. Next slide. Not sure if, oh, there we go. So what we did is when we started this project, we did go out in the field. We've done a full walkthrough of each of your facilities. That information is available to you as well. So in a future meeting, if you want to take someone inside the pump room of the rec center there by the pool, you can actually take someone there by doing a walkthrough inspection. Same thing goes for collaborating with other professionals as going into your treatment facility. You can take people into that treatment facility, see what's there, and then communicate on what things need to be done at a more granular level. Because having different people come up to the community and go through it, if they can come up that much more prepared and advise and talk about it in a meeting room, we wanted to enable you to have access to it that way. So in the presentation, if you were not that you need to do that now, but if you were to click on either one of those pictures, it would take you into a walkthrough of each of those areas. But you can maybe do that later. Next slide. Confirmation of ownership is something that came up during this project. Because Sun Peaks became a municipality after some of this infrastructure was already built, there are some assets throughout the community that appear to be like that we believe are strata-owned assets, but that is a point to be clarified and also determine how you want to go forward with new development, ensuring that the ownership and responsibility of certain infrastructure is on the party that you choose. But here's an example of the cabins where currently it is unclear on the true owner of the water, the sewer, and drainage infrastructure. So currently that is part of what's adding up to your $165 million in assets, but in total, all the assets that we believe are strata owned are adding up to almost $7 million of the $165 million. So that is a point of refinement and clarity that can be looked at by yourselves and your staff. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, all the costs that are being used to calculate the values that you're seeing are all being used for construction unit rates as experienced over the last year through projects in Sun Peaks. So because Urban Systems is involved with other design level assignments, we were able to draw upon some of those unit rates. And then the idea is that over time, over the next couple of years of construction, that Clint and others might choose to look at these unit rates and see, is that appropriate for what you're experiencing today? Or is it more? Typically, we are seeing year to year cost escalation on unit rates. So just to be alive to the fact that what you'll see now will likely increase, your portfolio will likely increase next year, even if you didn't do any further construction. Next slide. So this slide and the very next slide are a summary of the value of your different systems or asset systems or groupings that we have. So under the water system, you have accumulation of different assets from your water treatment plants, raw water reservoir, your wells, your existing reservoirs, pump stations and such, even right down to the fire hydrant and water valve and service connections to each property. All that together adds up to about $67.5 million. So one of the ways I like to communicate is if you walk past a fire hydrant, think about $15,000. And every fire hydrant 15, 15, 15 as you walk past a fire hydrant. It's an easy trigger condition, especially as you're communicating with, members of the community who might not be involved in managing infrastructure. And then wastewater system, that's all your wastewater treatment plant, your manholes and pipes, so that obviously our showers and toilets and stuff work the way that they're supposed to. And ultimately that wastewater is treated at your treatment system. And each one of these items have a useful life of their own. So you will see that some items are seen to be further, like the wastewater treatment plant, calculating at about 37% remaining useful life versus other assets such as your gravity mains in your sewer system are sitting at about 70% useful life. So it's not as much the pipes as it is the treatment plant to be aware of. And you will see where certain things are starting to appear to come due, or at least further review will be needed to look at these things being flagged as a deficit item. Next slide. And further to what I said, the storm drainage system is all your surface water infrastructure, culverts and mains, catch basins and such through the community, adding up to about 13 million. Your road system, about 25 million. Your buildings adding up to about 26 million. And each one of these, as an example with buildings, this is one where if you get an appraisal done, you will probably find that your appraisal value will come in much higher than 25 million. And when you do get an appraisal, that would be an opportunity to update your asset management plan to ensure you're drawing upon the most robust information possible to inform your planning. And then your fleet is also there at just over $2 million. But if you were to add a new fire truck or something like that, of course, those prices are going to change and jump. But you can see it's calculating at about 165, almost $1.5 million. And I'll draw your attention to the bottom right, which is a $4.1 million average annual life cycle investment, as we call it, which is a calculated amount showing you what things, all things being equal, should you be trying to put away for ensuring you have the money in place to deal with the spikes as they occur, which is what's showing here. One thing to note is sorry?
Can we ask a question?
Absolutely.
Can we ask questions? Oh, just going back to the previous slide. Wondering what was included in Parks and Recreation in the roads component, why it was included there versus buildings. I'm assuming maybe it's the arena, but at 2.5 million.
Yeah, what might be, and I thank you for that question. What might be an idea is Clint has a copy of the full drop or full spreadsheet where we have all this calculating, and would be able to pull it up, and I can probably pull it up. I just don't want to take too much of your time right now, because I apparently have 15 minutes. But be able to drill down what is in each one of those categories. Absolutely, some of the building Parks and Recreation assets are within Parks and Rec, but there are ones that were identified as outside assets, and that might include your tennis courts. It might include your the plaza with the playground that's there. But we can, myself or someone like Clint could report back if you like on what's kind of in each one of those categories. Are you okay with that, or would you like me to go further?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay. Next slide. So I said, as different infrastructure is showing as nearing the end of its useful life, this graphic here kind of illustrates when you might have more significant spikes. You will look at about 2030, which is the big blue spike, which stretches over your average annual life cycle investment. That is some of your wells and your treatment facilities, which already we've been discussing about, well, we might not be doing the whole thing. Maybe it's a component of the thing, which is going to it'll either stretch out those costs into smaller components, or it'll be done differently. So it's a trigger condition to look at it in more detail, plan out the project in your capital plan, which definitely goes to a higher level of granularity, and that would be used to update this as different renewal works occur. But to be alive to the fact that there are assets that are currently showing as needing to be looked at, the red category in the far left, that's 2025, and that's some of your wastewater system assets. Next slide. So this is just some of the considerations for looking forward. There's 2 slides left, and that is just establishing asset management as an ongoing program. What I will mention is that we did do a draft of a first asset management policy for your consideration. That was part of our scope, and that'll be given to both Cheryl and Clint to be able to advance with your support if that's what you choose. But it is a draft asset management policy, which most communities are putting asset management policies now in place, so that as there's changeover of either leadership or staff, then it's a continual business practice that happens regardless of who's in the room. And then confirming ownership of some of the utilities in the strata developments is something that's kind of unique to Sun Peaks. Consider if the gas infrastructure is to be included or not. And then review assets that are past their useful life and adjust that based off findings. I mean, I'm not going to review each of these, but basically we're looking at the condition and life cycle of your pump stations and treatment plants and wells would be something that is showing the big blue spike that was on the graph. Those would be something that seems to be highlighted as an upcoming thing to look into further. Next slide. And then some of these is there has been some recent work that we have not brought into your asset management plan yet, and that includes some of your electrical assets. There's some operational technology work that has recently been done with, I think it's Exceed Engineering and then even Xenon Cyber. And those assets have not been included into your asset management as of yet because we didn't have the information. And then I know that there's an interest by staff to establish and develop some service level targets so that for each of the asset categories, water, sewer, roads, drainage, parks, that you have an actual written and definable service level that you're looking to maintain for the community. Obviously, ones like having safe drinking water that meets Canadian drinking water standard is an easier one, but other ones might be something that you choose to look into further. And then incorporating risk, criticality, and climate considerations into your asset management program as well. Next slide. So that kind of wraps up. It's an overview. Again, I was initially thinking we'd have 30 minutes, but to keep it tighter for you for your meeting, I thought I would shorten it a little bit for you, but you do have a copy of the full asset management report. Clint has a copy of the detailed spreadsheet, which is where we're doing all the calculations. And you do have access to the geographic information system as well, which looks at all those components as well.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments, Councillor Kim?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is a question here or two. But as far as the difference between strata and non-strata, they're still using municipal services. So in terms of ownership, it doesn't, I'm confused on that when you're looking at the cabins or wherever. It's the use is still the common use. I mean, they're using municipal services. So whether it's the strata is billed or individuals are billed, what's the difference in terms of how are we calling ownership of utilities? Because they're still billed by municipal, they're still paying municipal.
For sure. Yeah, I can answer. I can start with the answer on that, and then maybe either Clint or Cheryl might choose to chime in or someone else. But with the assets, it's just whether or not you would have to be the one to pay for the replacement if it was needing to be replaced. And that could be a pipe or a manhole or replace a fire hydrant that's on a strata property. And if you don't have to pay for the replacement and maintenance work on that, then that is something that you don't necessarily have to list on your investment planning. So if you're looking to have a utility rate or provide taxation to people for certain services, I know that some are under utilities and some are just under your tax, and I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about that specifically. But basically, you don't. I don't think most communities want to own any more than they need to be responsible for, because that becomes a burden of your tax base versus as your ratepayers. And then if a strata has an issue, like in Kamloops, if a strata property has an issue with their sewer system and something needs to be replaced, it's the strata's responsibility to replace that infrastructure. That wouldn't be a municipal cost. So in particular, replacement is probably one of the biggest things. I agree with you in the sense that it's still a sewer load to your sewer system, and it's still a water distribution need to the water system that you're providing a service. They're taking the water and contributing the sewer, but not the actual physical infrastructure isn't owned by, it's a question of whether it's owned by yourselves or not. Does that help answer that, or does someone else want to round that out?
I feel bad interrupting here, but Finley, our planner, needs to leave.
Yeah.
He's presenting the density bonusing.
So we got,
And he needs to leave at 4, and that's a hard cutoff.
yeah, we got a hard cutoff, so apologies. So yeah, thanks very much
We
for
can
your,
go back to this.
for your presentation. We can come back to it later. Could I just get a motion to receive the asset management plan by Councilor Reagan, second by Councilor Campbell? All in favor? So moved. Okay.
Just a quick comment and thanks to staff.
Yeah, that's great.
Down this path, this is so critically important for us as we look to the future, and I mean, we are just at the start of a more complicated process that's gonna generate surprising numbers, so.
Absolutely.
But it is very much the right thing to do, so appreciate the work of staff and urban systems.
Yeah, that's, yeah. Okay, moving on to 7.1, bylaws, density bonusing report, Director Hoffman, do you want to come lead us in and introduce them?
Yeah, we've been working on getting a density bonusing amendment to allow for greater densities, properties in exchange for either cash in lieu or affordable housing units as part of the development. Our planner, Mr. Finley will.
Mr. Sinclair.
Mr. Sinclair, sorry.
Yeah.
Mr. Sinclair will, as all the details, and can answer any questions, council.
Just before you jump in, Billy, I know you're gonna have to bolt when you leave, so I just wanted to say it's a great piece of work here, and I'm very excited to see, this piece of new legislation come forward, so thank you in advance for it.
Thank you for that. My partner in crime, Randy Lambright, is unable to be here today, but Randy and I worked through this. So in 2023, the government with the local government housing initiatives started making some changes in the government, speed up development, demand certain things from municipalities by saying thou shalt. How that landed, to be determined probably yet in another 10 years. Government saying you should or will do things. 2024, the housing statutes amendments came in, which said, further to what we did in 2023, here's some new ways that you can create density in your communities. And remember, these are expanding on ideas, like density bonusing has got to be 30 years old. And has been demanded to be in OCPs for maybe about that long as well. But this is a real core way of looking at it, assessing it, and ensuring that there's viability for both the resort or the municipalities and the developers. So as we go through this, there was a part on inclusionary zoning, which was requirement. And then there was a density bonusing piece, which was voluntary. So we took time and we assessed both. And we did go through the process. We talked to resort, we talked to developers in Sun Peaks, we talked with staff. And we reviewed both of them against the merits and the outcomes of not negatively affecting development. That was a core principle of this, and ensuring that maintaining costs at a reasonable level based on historical development costs in community. It was our findings, our feelings, and I think right from the word go, we felt that requiring every development coming to Sun Peaks to provide affordable housing at this point in time was probably not what the community needed from a planning perspective. We did believe, however, that so inclusionary zoning requirement, if you do a development, you will do affordable housing either by providing a unit or units or providing cash in lieu was a difficult concept. On the density bonusing side, which is voluntary, you provide conditions that allow developers to assess whether they could put more density into their projects, and also provide a unit or provide cash in lieu, and it's their choice. And you make this an amendment to the zoning bylaw that they just look at it and go, that works for me, and they don't need to come in and do any rezoning or ask for any changes. The municipality either gets a unit or gets a cash in lieu contribution. We felt that was the way to go, and we assessed all the zones in Sun Peaks, and you have a bit of a challenge in Sun Peaks, because a lot of your zones are really low density or floor area ratio. So the only way that you can add more units is to add more land. And that creates a challenge in the overall master plan, because does the resort want to draw down larger land resources, or does it want more density? The other part, if you need more land, you're adding cost to the development, so you're not really going to find a way to create value to give a unit or do cash in lieu. So what we've determined in our recommendation is a vertical solution. So in some cases, if we're going up, you don't need any more land to add units on the top, or create a new solution and densify, add more units, smaller unit sizes. And there's no way that the developer can say, well, we're incurring more costs, because the land value may go up if they're getting more square foot with the municipality, but we're not giving up more land. Okay, so we were pretty settled that all your zones have been assessed, the higher density zones, either per hectare, the number of units per hectare, or the floor area ratios were high enough that we felt you could add density and make it work. I then went through a fairly substantive process to calculate how much does it cost to build at Sun Peaks, so that we'd be able to come up and say, what's the average size of a vertical multifamily unit times the cost to build at Sun Peaks equals a cash in lieu contribution. Sun Peaks is varied. You have a lot of challenges in land development, extra costs, geotech, riparian, water, different things, grades. So when I worked with the developers in the resort, it's the cost to build the buildings plus the soft cost. So the hard cost of construction, the soft costs of design, plus what we feel is a land value that's appropriate. And it comes out to $475 a square foot, which is pretty expensive development cost in general. And remember, there's a lot of developments in this community that can press up to $500, $600, $700 a square foot. But that's also based on bigger units, higher end offerings. This is the average unit, the average size, kind of around a BC housing or BC builds. So 700 square feet. Could we argue it could be bigger, could be smaller? We felt that was a good average working with the developer at 1180. And we've felt or feel that 475 times 700 is a reasonable value, about $330,000, $332,000 for an cash in contribution to the municipality. There have been some conversations around, should there be an assist factor where you can assist that, kind of like development cost charges, and in downtimes you could say, well, you only owe 80%. Good times you could do 100%, and should there be development cost charge, should we not charge development cost charges on the affordable? Those are decisions that aren't to be made right now, like in terms of development cost charges, avoidance and everything, and setting a policy as we did for your cash in lieu. It means every year you can evaluate the cost of construction and whether you want to give an assist factor in any given year. It allows you as council to manage the real part of the process, which will be how much you're going to pay me or you're going to give me a unit. And it does allow 5 units, and we tested it against the market. I'm not going to tell you who I talked to, but we asked them to do a case study. If we gave you this, would this interest you? And the answer was yes, 5 units. We would definitely be interested in this process, either as a contribution of a unit or cash in lieu. So we've truthed and sourced it all the way through. We've reviewed this with the provincial government, and we offered them the opportunity to ask questions. We went through this conversation. We said, please provide any comments. We gave them the date of this council meeting, and we haven't received anything. Staff was in the meeting, so they felt, or we felt at the end, that they were satisfied that everything was met. And you're going to give developers an opportunity that is viable, and you're going to get something out of it.
Actually, we made it with 4 minutes this morning.
No, I mean, that's.
Any questions from council?
I was super quick,
Yeah,
it's
go ahead,
not,
Councilor.
it's not the meat of, I'm just looking at some of the, at SPRC, I'm assuming Sun Peaks Resort Corp, which they don't want to be bad anymore, right? It's.
I think that was just language.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
That's
Yeah, it's still out here.
It's in the current OCP, so we don't wanna,
Right, so you pulled it right from.
it's right from the OCP, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I had to look it up myself.
yeah, I just think they would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Couple
go ahead.
questions. I did flag this one earlier, and there is a discrepancy in the table versus the reporting around the SR for the CC one. It's 3.0 in the table and it's 0.25 in the wording, and I think that folds over into the bylaw change that we're talking about. So we should adjust that. The other two questions I have relative to the average unit sizing. So I know with the direct experience we're having at 1180, average unit sizing is 815 square feet, not 700. The unit cost is roughly that same, that 475 range, but it puts the unit values at 370 versus 330.
Based on that,
Based on that average sizing, right? So I don't know how it paints itself out for all of the existing development in the resort. But I guess at this point, in the absence of us having a report from staff on how that average sort of was derived,
We used a balance of all the units we could come up with across the street. There's some smaller units, there's other units from across the street from 1180. We were trying to create an average and not try to get specific to one unit. It is a policy, so council can amend that the average size in Sun Peaks is 815. You know, you could amend the policy part here if you believe that size needs, or you see the size going up or down, you could make that over time.
yeah, but I think at this point, we need to advance the policy on the framework that we have.
and then look to amend potentially.
And then we can look to decide whether or not that's at the appropriate level. In terms of the cash and move payment. I had one other question regarding the content of the report, and it talks about the units remaining with the building owner, and I'm not sure who the building owner is in the context of that. So in the table, it talks about providing to the local housing authority units for, but in the guts of it, it talks about building owner, and I don't know if that is the developer. Or if it is the strata that might ultimately own the development. So just looking for some clarification on who actually is going to own the units and ensure their rental.
It would, as Sun Peaks is set up right now, it would be your housing authority that you would transfer, but the opportunity, you have to be able to allow the building owner to manage it through covenant process, et cetera, but that way we reviewed that. And that will likely create a fair bit of negotiation. It is, because who owns it, how much do you pay for strata fees, how do you do all of this? It's going to be challenging if somebody holds a unit, gives you a unit in a building, a one-off unit in one building, because you are then one unit owner within 60 units. You're on the strata, you get a vote, you pay full strata fees, or that's all fine and dandy. If you don't negotiate that up front, the stratas will always want their money. So if there isn't something negotiated in detail up front, it will cause likely challenges in the future. So there will be some negotiating around how it looks if somebody gives you a unit.
Versus a cash.
It's a cash in the, yeah.
And I would assume then that Council Writing's point then that, so you're saying then, I mean, that the unit would be under the control of the housing authority, but there would be certain responsibilities back to the strata that runs that development.
If you're sitting in it,
To
you're going
meet
to.
certain,
Yeah.
obviously, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then that would potentially impact that tenant relationship, there's a tenant in it, the housing authority owns it, okay?
Yeah.
Gotcha, Council Writing, anything further?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just want to quickly again thank Mr. Sinclair and Mr. Lambright for their work on this. With the legislative changes, this turned out to be a much larger and more complex project than what
Absolutely.
they thought they signed up for.
No,
And of course, with Mr. Hopper's support as well. So, and I just also want to point out that this is a Housing Accelerator Fund initiative.
requirement.
It replaced our OCP because we felt like this was something that we could execute on quicker and also obviously contributes to development. And so I'm very pleased to say with the approval of this, we have now met all of our housing accelerator fund initiatives.
And I would just say that I know, going back a number of years now, my last term on council, when Mayor Rain and during the original. I think it was when Powder came forward as a development, and we were having conversations then about. Trying to find ways to work on when there was desired increased density. How could we create product for the housing authority, and it was being dialogue with developers, and. Now we've taken it away from this kind of moving target through a piece of legislation that allows us to kind of have a path forward, so that's fantastic. Any further questions? No? So we have, these amendments need to be done one at a time?
All separately, yes.
Okay, so on the first one, can I get a motion on the rezoning amendment bylaw number 0230-225, be introduced and read for a first and second time? Councillor Cool, second by Councillor Wyken.
That is as amended.
Sorry, as amended. All in favor? And so approved. Number two, that the rezoning bylaw is amended, number 0230-2025, be read a third time. By Councillor Kemp, second by Councillor Ryken. All in favor? And number three, that the rezoning amendment bylaw as amended, number 0230-2025 be adopted. I get a motion. We're taking turns, Councillor Ryken, Councillor Kimmel, all in favor? Somebody look at an appointment with the physiotherapist. And then finally, number four, the council approved the cash and lieu policy number 0034. And again, mover, Councillor Wright, second by Councillor Kimball, all in favor. Excellent. Thank you very much. We were
Thank you.
3 minutes over. Thanks, Kevin, appreciate it. Okay, this is, so number 8, anything under new business? No, please, something? No. And then moving on to 9, so we have some correspondence. Dealing through a number of pieces from the town of Royal, a response regarding Bill M216. Further pieces on that, on 9.2 and also in 9.4. Just some responses back from the housing minister. And then on 9.3, we have our, I want to thank Councillor Wright for his efforts to reach out to TELUS, and we got some feedback on planned upgrades coming down the pipe. It sounds like in the first quarter of 2026. Can I get a motion to receive?
Mr. Mayor, if I may just speak quickly to the
Sure.
TELUS one, I did get contacted by TELUS, and there was an error in their correspondence that they wanted to correct, and because it talks about the first quarter of 2026, but it also talks about upgrades in the summer. They are not doing the upgrades in the summer, they are doing those in the first quarter of 2026. And if I may, I think there is still some need for some ongoing dialogue with TELUS. Particularly around, we have two issues. One is capacity, one is distribution within the valley area. And the distribution pieces are of importance to us, particularly from the municipal perspective in terms of our infrastructure and operating those SCADA systems that keep everything running properly. So I'm hoping to get council's blessing to continue on some further conversation with Mr. Cruikshank and Mr. Anderson relative to what it is that they're planning and just keeping council informed on that work.
Got some weed motion, something of that nature, something like that. CEO?
I don't think so, unless you'd like to direct staff to also have some involvement, but I think Councillor.
Yeah, Councillor Wright, it's good to do that, and we get the core here, Councillor Kim, you're good with that. Yeah, I'd be great with that. I think just further to add to that, this is going back, probably about, I want to say 3-4 months. There was a presentation to the TNRD by TELUS, but also at that same meeting was a presentation by Rogers. And they're doing some fairly significant work along the Coquihalla corridor in places like Merritt and Logan Lake, and they had hinted at that time that once those projects were completed, that they may be looking to come north up the number 5, so there may be some opportunity for some diversification up into our area with Rogers as well too. So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your work on that. Please continue. Can I get a motion to receive the correspondence? Councillor Redkin, second by Councillor Kendall, all in favor? And number 10, any questions from the public in person or online? No? Okay. I gotta pull this up, because I got 2 pieces there. We can go. Oh, did you? No, we gotta do the, I have it here.
And Mr. Mayor, maybe I realize that I missed a sentence in sending it to you, but just a note that for the resolution to move into the closed meeting, in addition to what's listed on the agenda, we're also closing the meeting under section 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and the level of government and the municipality and the First Nation.
Okay. And then, there we go, and then we also have, so we're gonna close today's meeting then, in addition to what was just read by the CAO. Community charter, section 91A, legal advice, and D, the security of property of the municipality. Can I get a motion? My Councilor Kimball, second by Councilor Wright. Okay, we're going to close and, sorry. All those in favor, sorry. And this means.
There you go, we got the